Back on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in. We go to the phones, and joining us this morning, the senior senator from the great state of Texas, Senator John Cornyn. Good morning. How are you today, sir?
Good morning, Chad. Good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. First, before we get into the CARES Act and what it will mean for small businesses and for people beginning this week, I want to ask you about the president's press conference yesterday, a pretty sobering press conference yesterday, in which he was basically preparing America and Americans for up to 200,000 people dying, possibly. When you saw that press conference, when you've seen these numbers come across, what's your reaction?
Well, the most important thing that the president and our political leaders can do now is to tell us the truth and to rely on the experts like Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci. I also think that what they are trying to do is impress the seriousness of this on all of us and to convince us that really the course of this disease, of this infection, is up to us. Because if you are a normal, otherwise healthy person, if you wash your hands and don't touch your face and you maintain social distancing, you're at very low risk. But we also know that people who are at higher risk, elderly people, people with underlying disease, are going to need to be hospitalized, and that's why you've seen America put on a war footing and build, like we did in World War II, the arsenals of democracy. We are building the arsenal of our current democracy and getting supplies to people who need them in the hot spots like New York, New Orleans, and the like. Meantime, we're all doing our patriotic duty by staying indoors and reducing our contact with other people and staying healthy.
Small businesses obviously are getting hit. Employees are getting hit. I mean, this is impacting everybody. If there is any good news this week, it is the CARES Act did pass, and it means a lot for small businesses out there. Talk a little bit about first, what small businesses can look forward to from this bill and what they can start seeing maybe even this week.
Well, those who have access to the Wall Street Journal, you can see actually an article I just posted on Twitter at John Cornyn that talks about the SBA loan program. They're going to charge 0.5% of interest for loans to small businesses, so they can keep alive and be there with jobs once we defeat the virus. But these loans will be forgivable if they're used to pay salary, if they're used to pay overhead, and the goal is, as part of this multifaceted program, to keep small businesses alive and keep their doors open, so that once we come out of this, our economy can come back and people can go back to work.
If you're a small business owner, who's listening to this show right now, what is this process going to be like when you go to a bank, when you talk to folks? I mean, is this going to be a fairly easy process to go through, or is this going to be something that's very time consuming?
This is going to be, my advice would be to talk to your local bank or credit union with whom you already have a relationship if you're a small business, and all of them do. But this is not going to be through the normal bureaucracy of the Small Business Administration. It's going to be through SBA certified lenders. So, but it's going to be what we try to do is to make this have as little red tape and little delay as possible. They actually are hoping that the money could be dispensed in as little as one day, because most of the applications will likely be filed online. That remains to be seen whether that goal can be met, but part of our objective here, Chad, was to make sure we got the money out the door to the people who needed it most, people who weren't getting a paycheck through.
All right, back on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Senator John Cornyn once again joining us as we got disconnected. We may need a stimulus for our phone lines, Senator. Can we?
Well, good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about that there's not going to be as much bureaucracy, as far as getting these loans out to small businesses.
Yeah. The goal here is, first of all, to get cash to people through their IRS account, their bank account, online as soon as possible. If you're a family of four, you'll receive, making $150,000 or less, you could receive up to $3,400. Hopefully that will be within 2 weeks, no later than 3 weeks from last Friday when President Trump signed the CARES Act into law. And now the Treasury has issued guidelines for the Small Business Administration certified lenders, namely your local bank and credit union, and you need to talk to them if you're a business and need a bridge loan to cover your overhead, to cover your employee salaries and the like. And if you qualify for this, and businesses under 500 employees are eligible, then that loan will be forgiven. The goal is to provide a means for them to stay alive, keep their business going, so that when we defeat this virus, as we will, there'll be jobs waiting for their employees when that's done.
Senator, do you think, and I know it's hard to have a crystal ball on this, and you have the Democrats who are already talking about a Phase 4 bill, do you think this is going to be enough, or do you think the government's going to have to step back in again?
I don't think any of us know, but what I can tell you for sure is that this is unprecedented. If you had told me I was going to go to the Senate and vote on a $2 trillion bill, I would have thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
But yet 96 senators unanimously did, and it passed overwhelmingly in the House. That's because our nation is on a war footing against this pandemic, this virus, and that's obviously from a public health standpoint. And we know our first responders and our hospital workers, nurses, and doctors are on the front line fighting that. But we're also in a race for time to come up with treatments by doing clinical trials to see what medications work, and then ultimately our researchers will produce a vaccine. But we know this is not just a healthcare crisis. This is an economic crisis for our country, and people are going to have experienced a lot of pain, and our goal is to try to provide them as much relief and support as we can. If there are other things we need to do, gaps in what we've done so far, or if there are things that don't work the way we intended for them to work, then we can certainly address that in another installment.
Senator, before I let you go, if we were not having the coronavirus issue right now, I think the biggest economic story would be our friends in the oil fields and what we're looking at with oil. And that's a story that gets largely left behind and silenced because of the coronavirus, yet they're suffering. And we got a lot of listeners who work out in the oil fields. What's going on there? Is there anything internationally being done to get this price of oil back up to where it needs to be?
Yeah, Chad, this couldn't have come at a worse time. Obviously, with the slack in demand, obviously, and an abundant supply, thanks to our oil and gas producers in Texas and elsewhere, this has really driven the price to very, very low prices, under $20 a barrel. And that makes it very hard for these businesses to maintain their employees and to continue in operation. But one of the most irresponsible things or reasons for this happening is the Saudis have decided to flood the marketplace with cheap Saudi crude. And, 15 senators, including Senator Cruz and I, have sent a very clear message to the Saudis that if you expect us to support you when our shared interests are involved in the Congress, then you need to rethink this, because I know this is a completely irresponsible. And I know that message has been sent and received. I've talked to Dan Brulette, our Secretary of Energy, who succeeded Rick Perry yesterday, and I'll talk to him again today. And I know the Trump administration is fully engaged. President Trump talked to President Putin, and Russia is also flooding the markets with cheap oil, too, because that's what they need for revenue. But we are working that as hard as we know how, because it's a real problem.
One more before I let you go. A listener who just texted in asking when you expect the SBA to get the application process up and running.
Well, the rules have been now issued today, and so it should be a matter just of your local bank deciding whether this is something that they can do. Obviously, there's some concern about the low interest rates and whether banks will find that sufficiently attractive, but that's something we will work through. But it's not too early for them to contact their local bank or credit union today, because these businesses can begin applying on Friday, this coming Friday.
Right. All right. Senator John Cornyn, as always, we appreciate your time, and stay healthy, and I'm sure we'll visit again very, very soon.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you. That's U.S. Senator John Cornyn here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. And by the way, we got news yesterday that our friends over at ABC Bank, and we're going to visit with James Arnold, President and CEO of ABC Bank. We'll visit with him on Friday here on the program. But they are going to be doing these the stimulus loans for small businesses when it comes to the Payroll Protection Act that was included in the CARES Act. That's the one that a lot of small businesses are going to be taking a look at. In fact, we've got a story up at KFYO.com right now that you can read through. It's kind of a press release from ABC Bank saying, yeah, we've always taken care of the Lubbock community. We're going to take care of the Lubbock business community still today, and they're going to be processing those stimulus loans. And to hit on one more thing that Senator Cornyn said, from what I have heard, this Friday is when you're going to start seeing banks, and I think we'll get confirmation from this from James Arnold on Friday, but I think that's when ABC Bank is also preparing to start rolling everything out. And so, there are people who are already getting into the process. If you're a small business owner, the faster you start doing the paperwork, and the faster you start getting things ready to go, the faster that money's going to come. And so, get on top of it if you can. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.